everything bass fishing. Coming to you worldwide from MegaWare Keel Guard Studios.
Hey everybody, great to be back for another episode of Bass Edge Radio. That's right, the June 1st episode, number 401. Man, another fun-filled episode obviously coming up. Hopefully an educational experience from the professional bass fishing world. Man, if you've liked any of our recent episodes, reminder, subscribe, like, check out that YouTube channel. Of course, any of your streaming methods, go ahead and subscribe to those as well so that you never miss another episode of Bass Edge Radio. Quick shout out to our title sponsor, been with us since 2006, of course, talking about MegaWare, the first do-it-yourself keel protector. Super happy they continue to stay with us. Manufacturing also several other boat accessories. Make sure that you see them at keelguard.com. Well, if you watched or listened to the last episode of Bass Edge Radio, our 400th episode, you know that we gave away a $125 Midway USA gift card, or at least we're going to give away based on some actions through that process. And of course, we've done that, and I want to give a big shout out to the winner, Brian Postma. Brian Postma, you have won the $125 Midway USA gift card. Congratulations. Brian posted on our YouTube channel, said that he has listened to all 400 episodes of Bass Edge Radio. Man, that is awesome to see. Shoot us an email, support@bassedge.com. We'll be sure you receive that $125 gift certificate. You can also DM us on IG or hit us up with a comment there on YouTube, and we'll get in touch with you for sure. So congratulations, Brian. Quick update. It's June, obviously. Summertime is here, and Bass Angler Magazine, one of our great media partners, the summertime issue is out. You can check that out at bassanglermag.com. One of the cool things I have seen in that particular issue was an article that was done with Mike Iaconelli talking about noise and vibrations while you're fishing. Is it good? Is it bad? Maybe it's good. You know, I think long term we've always thought noise, at least when we were younger, or when I was younger, you know. Dad used to always say, be quiet, we don't want to scare the fish and all that kind of good stuff. But could be good. We see a lot of different things with the hydro wave, and you see it a lot in some other styles of fishing, particularly striper fishing. So anyway, that's a great article there. Make sure you check that out. Bass Angler Magazine, that summer issue is out. Well, here it is. My take on the latest on the water action with tournament highlights. Of course, early, or I guess, kind of mid-month, mid-May, as we put out that mid-May podcast, this event was going on. It was the Lay Lake Elite Series. That event won by Will Davis Jr., a local hammer there, obviously in central Alabama. Man, squeaked by Brandon Polinick on the last day to get that victory. Primarily, Will was relying on a lot of local knowledge, fishing high percentage areas. Spent a lot of time up there by the dam and all kinds of areas and spots throughout the event. But that local knowledge seemed to be very successful for Will. Congratulations to him. I think probably the most interesting story that came out of that particular event was Polinick's second place, finish. He basically did it right there. I'm going to call it on released fish in Beeswax Creek. You could take this back to the 2007 Bassmaster Classic. Kevin Van Dam finished third place in that event, primarily focusing on Beeswax Creek. He came back in 2010 Bassmaster Classic on Lay Lake, actually won the event in Beeswax Creek. Polinick almost won this event. I think a lot of those fish are retreads. The landing there at Beeswax is the most popular tournament landing on Lay Lake. Of course, in Alabama, seems like everybody fishes down there. So it's pretty interesting. Obviously, I don't mean any disrespect by that. That's a great strategy. It's obviously got some history to it. It was just pretty neat to see Brandon kind of capitalize on that. And I gotta say that dude's on fire right now. He finished second at Santee. Went I think no, not second at Santee. He finished second at Wheeler Lake just this past week. So that was pretty cool to see. Then of course he had second at Lay. I know he did really well at Santee. He's only had one hiccup, Polinick, since he won AOY last year, and that was over at Lake Seminole. Had a rough finish there, but man, that guy's on fire. Lastly, with that Lay Lake Elite Series event, Jason Christie, 9 pounds, 4 ounces. That's just a freaking bomb of a fish out there on Lay Lake. So that was cool to watch. Then the MLF Bass Pro Tour on Lake Guntersville did not disappoint either. Man, fish caught from 6 inches to 20 plus foot of water. Congrats, obviously, to Jacob Wheeler. I think that's his 6th national title. To say he's on fire would be an understatement. He did have a hiccup the tournament before that, but I think it was the first or second time maybe he's missed the knockout round in all of his Bass Pro Tour events in that tournament previous to his Guntersville win. So he went out for blood and he got it. So that was cool to see. The second place angler in that event, young angler, we're actually going to have right here on this episode of Bass Edge in our feature angler spotlight coming up here in probably just about 15 minutes or so. That's Jacob Wall. Jacob had an epic day, catching 26 plus pounds on that first qualifying day. Caught some fish in some real interesting ways. We're going to dial that in with Jacob and talk to him about all of that good stuff right here on this episode. So stay tuned for that. If you wanted an education on bluegill bed fishing, Guntersville was also a great tournament to watch. That BBT event, so many anglers did well targeting that shallow water bluegill spawning where those big fish are lurking, kind of hanging around, looking to feed on those bluegill. And it's, you know, almost like a sight fishing game up there when you're doing that. And it was great to watch. If you haven't been able to check that out, go back. We've talked about it a lot right here on Bass Edge Radio. I think David Dudley won the bluegill battle in that event. I'm pretty sure he finished in 4th place. And his focus was primarily wacky worms, fishing around those bluegill beds. So he did a great job. Another event that went off, man, it was a busy half of the month. The Toyota Series at Sam Rayburn down in Texas. Absolute historical blowout. Alec Morrison won the 3-day event by 24 pounds. That's an MLF margin of victory. 24 pounds over a 3-day tournament. That's absolutely incredible. Had a huge day 1 with 27 pounds, 29 on day 2, then capping it with a 16-pound bag. Fortunately, we're going to hear about Alex's success. He's going to be joining us in our showcase portion of this episode of the show. Alec being from New York, it's going to be fun to hear from him, get the opportunity to understand how he's developed through the years, and it's going to be cool to hear as a young angler, 23 years old, kind of getting his perspective on that big W. So we got 2 young guys on this show. We got Jacob Wall, going to be our featured angler. Again, like I say, he's 28, and then Alec Morrison, 23. Man, the young guys are really making a lot of noise. So the last event we had this latter part of May, here as we tape this June 1 episode, was the Wheeler Lake event. I mentioned Polinick finished 2nd in that event. But huge shout out to Adam Rasmussen out of Wisconsin. Came back from, I think it was 7th place to win that event. Had a big bag on the last day, 21 pounds, 10 ounces. Said he capitalized on a shad spawn, a little bit of ledge fishing. But the shad spawn was really his go-to deal that last day. That's why he capped that 21 pounds pretty quick. But it sounds like Decatur Flats was... a Metroplex in rush hour. It was just getting crushed out there. A lot of guys kind of bumping into each other, and it seemed like Wheeler is back a little. A lot of 5-fish limits, so great to see Wheeler fishing pretty well. Probably going to need a little bit more grass to kind of get some space in between some anglers out there, but right now those hard spots are are what's really making it work for anglers out there, and will probably continue as we roll into June. Man, we're almost done with this segment right here, but man, I'd be crazy if I didn't give a shout out to the Johnston boys. Man, Chris Johnson, fishing the Elite Series. Those guys went up to Sturgeon Bay, which they fish often. But they went up to, when I say often, they fish this tournament often. I doubt they're at Sturgeon Bay fishing very often, but they had a 2-day team total of 53 pounds, 8 ounces, finished second place in a 150 plus team tournament. It took 54 weight to win. Egg Harbor, Wisconsin angler Spencer Sentwowski. Sorry, I butchered that, Spencer, and Paul Castellano. So congratulations to those guys. But dude, I mean, the Johnsons going up there and kind of making that thing work really says a lot about their prowess, man. Well, that's my Tourney Derb recap of the highlights. We're coming up next, the showcase segment with Alec Morrison out of New York. It's going to be fun to hear about his dominating event there at Sam Rayburn. Y'all stay tuned. This thing's going to keep rolling right here on Bass Edge Radio. We'll be back right after this message.
You know the importance of protecting your investments, so choose the protection the pros pick. Grinding sand, abrasive rocks, and concrete ramps are no match for our patented technology. The MegaWare Keel Guard is made tough and made to stick. Install it yourself in less than an hour, providing the most dependable, most trusted protection for your boat, guaranteed for life. Insist on the original Keel Guard the pros have picked for 25 years. MegaWare Keel Guard.
Nitro, a rush of tournament adrenaline. Nitro, the choice of champion, where performance meets play. Nitro, a big water beast, a pure fishing machine. Nitro, release the champion with it.
All right, here we go. Welcome back to Bass Edge Radio. We're in the showcase segment, and as you can see on the screen, we have the new Texas Hammer with us today. We got Alec Morrison. Man, Alec, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate you joining Bass Edge.
Hey, Kurt, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely, man. Well, we talked about a little bit about it in the intro. A just absolute beat down that you placed on some awesome anglers out there at Lake Sam Rayburn. I know it's been talked about in the media as your first time out there fishing a Toyota event. But first, it's a long drive from Texas back upstate to New York, and you are upstate. You live up there in Peru, like that Plattsburgh, Lake Champlain area. What was the drive like? What was going through your mind as you're knocking back 25 hours or so?
It was a good drive. It didn't go all that. It didn't take all that long. It felt like I made some pit stops along the way, so it was a little hectic. But overall, good vibes on the way back. Had the trophy in the front seat, and I was ripping back to my home lake of Champlain.
Absolutely, man. And let's talk about that for a minute. You know, you're a young guy, 23, right?
Mm-hmm.
23 years old. But you have, make no mistake, you have spent a lot of time out on the water up north, really kind of, honing your skills and trying to get to that next point in what you feel like is the progression of a bassin career, right? So, how did that progress for you, being, a young guy from New York, going down to Texas to kind of jump in this Toyota event?
Champlain was definitely a good place to grow up on and spend a lot of time on. Definitely, there's a lot of adversity, a lot of different things going on Champlain. It was able to definitely help me hone in my abilities, whether it was shallow or was deep, or with electronics or without. And it was definitely a little bit of a jump to go down to Rayburn, and fish somewhere I hadn't been before, and not only just fish a new place, but to enter an event down there. And I gave myself a decent amount of time, not enough time to look at the whole lake, that's for sure, but definitely enough time to break down some good areas, and it helped out a lot. And I was able to go down there. I wasn't on a complete whim. I did my background research, and I had an idea that not a small area, but a pretty big area, about a 10-mile area of the lake. I figured it would be going down in, and I wasn't there to flip bushes or fish grass. I was there to fish deep and strictly do that the whole time, and that's what I did.
So let's. I think I saw in some of the media that you spent 10 days pre-practice. Is that right? You were down there about 10 days.
Yes.
So when you get down there, obviously it's a long trek from New York. You're there to have some fun. It's New York's kind of progressing a little faster, I guess, probably this year than most years. It didn't have that
really
bad
is.
of a winter up there, but you got down to Rayburn. You wanted to have some fun fishing for one. Go kind of experience this, Southwestern Toyota division in Texas. Put some time and effort into honing your skills on a new body of water, kind of even in a new atmosphere, right? I mean, Rayburn, a lot different than Lake Champlain and maybe some other bodies of water that you spent some time. I know you've done quite a bit of fishing in Florida as well over the last, many months. So what was your thought process in putting that much time and how did you capitalize? Because I could go to a lake in 10 days and figure a couple things out, but doesn't mean I'm going to win the tournament. But you were able to do that. How did you put that time in to capitalize and putting together a good game plan?
Man, I knew it was a good little chunk of time for me to probably get a decent amount of looking around done. But like I said earlier, it wasn't enough time to look at the whole lake. So going into it, I knew I wanted to stay in one general region of the lake, and really where a lot of the work came into during those practice days was just strictly staying behind the wheel and idling and graphing, and that was huge. I was able to, my first day on Rayburn, had a really successful day fishing out deep and fishing brush piles that I had found just that day. So the first day really gave me a lot of confidence to just stick with it and to really leave no stone unturned in those areas that I thought were definitely better than average. So yeah, a lot of it was more so just idling and spending hours behind the engine as opposed to up there on the front deck.
Let's kind of break that down real quick for the listeners and kind of grasp what that means. I mean, when you're covering a small territory in that many days, do you have like a specific pattern that you're idling in? Do you have a specific program that you're trying to follow to make sure you don't leave, those stones unturned, like you mentioned?
Yeah, so at first, I didn't really have a plan as far as how I was going to go about graphing certain areas. Up north, we'll often I'll graph one whole area in one day and then move on to the next or whatever. But here I wasn't really exactly sure what I needed to be targeting at first.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said earlier, I did a decent amount of fishing as well, probably about 60% of the day graphing and about 40% of the day fishing. And this was a 12-hour day.
Right.
But after that first successful day, it kind of clued me into, okay, I caught 3 big ones today, and they were all in that 20 to 30 foot range, and they were all way off the bank. They were on like the ends of points. You have a lot of those big flats out there that are anywhere from 12 to 20 foot, and then once you get to the edge, like the main lake break, it would drop into 30 or 40. And some of those first big fish I caught, they were near around or near those breaks. Definitely helped if there was a drain somewhere nearby. and they came off piles in around that same range. So the next few days, that's what I began basically graphing the most, was just those real main lake breaks, long points, and like I said, it was an added bonus if there was as you guys call them, drains or ditches up north, someone might say. If those were around, that was definitely a bonus as well.
So once you started keying on getting some of those big bites on those drops, the edges, drains, creek channel swings, those types of things. So is that when then you were like, all right, I'm on to something, and
Yeah.
you continue to kind of probe that type of structure?
Well, no doubt. A lot of it then was just not only looking at my unit that day and trying to decipher, okay, how many of these areas set up similar and that I can go idle today and look for piles. Or I would even get home that night, get right on Navionics on my phone, and I'd be making dots at things on there contour wise that looked good and stuff that I knew I needed to check before practice was up. And then, I'd be out on the water and I'd graph a couple areas and go through things real well. And then I'd pull out my phone and be like, oh, yeah, I wanted to go check this and this as well. And I'd either, run over there or do whatever I needed to do. So a lot of it was just breaking down those contours in those areas and trying to get a feel for what I thought was best. Not necessarily to get a lot of bites, but more so to get those better quality bites where those bigger ones were hanging out.
Man, that's some
I
great
definitely
insight.
found I definitely found some shallow piles in practice that I could get a lot of bites on, and I mean pull up and catch a limit in 5 casts. But they would all be, like a pound to 2.5 pounds. And although that stuff was good, and I did use that kind of stuff on day 3 to fill a limit in the morning, that wasn't necessarily what I was after. If I found it, cool, but if not, oh well. It seemed to me like a lot of the bigger ones I was catching were definitely set up on something that made sense for them to be on, and they were definitely off the bank.
Well, man, that's a great detail on how you went about that process. Let's talk real quick about baits. How did that work out for you? We've seen a lot of media already. You used the 10-inch Reigns bubbling shaker on a football head, tungsten football head, and then also some drop shot with some Reigns. What specifically outside of just those baits, the 7-inch Reigns drop shot bait? What was it that was the key to those presentations?
Yeah, and a lot of it had to do with practice. Uh, During, I would say, 3/4 of the practice, maybe more like 85% of the days of practice, we had cloud cover, wind, storms rolling in, pressure changes. I was getting bit a lot more on reaction baits, whether that was a swim bait, like a paddle tail, hollow belly, something of that nature, or also like even a glide bait, your bigger presentations.
Right.
I was still getting bit on the worms in practice. Obviously, they definitely like the worm there. But as that transitioned into the first 2 days of the tournament, we were faced with, high skies, no wind. It was like 90 and high humidity. It was just, it was definitely
Different
one of
day.
those slow, definitely different day than practice. So I felt like it was better in that case for me to just slow down, because at this point I had put the time in. I knew uh, the stuff that I would be fishing over the course of the next 2 days was going to be what I felt like was the most high percentage stuff to catch big ones on. And I wasn't fishing, I was fishing the pile slow itself, but I wouldn't necessarily spend a lot of time there. If big ones weren't there and they weren't biting, I would leave. But those two variations of worms really came into play during the tournament when I had to slow down during those tougher conditions.
Makes a lot of sense. Quick adjustment. Real quick before we let you go, I got two quick things. First off, how surprised were you at your margin of victory when you came in the first day? You had 27. You backed it up with 29. You've got a monstrous lead. Were you taken back by that, or did you kind of expect that from kind of talk of what guys were catching prior to the event?
Yeah, I was obviously taken back by it a little bit, but at the same time, that's what I was after, and I knew that's what lived in there. And like I said, I had some good days of practice. I caught a lot of big fish. My very first day, I caught 31. I caught a 31-pound limit, and then threw back another 20-pound limit. And I was like, okay. And even though practice did get tougher after that first day, I knew what the potential was, and I knew that if I felt like if I didn't do it, somebody else was going to do it. So I definitely put the time in, and I was a little blown away a little bit day one.
Right.
But that's because all 3 days of the event, I'm normally pretty good at this. I like to, accurately weigh my fish and keep track of them. But in this event, I didn't weigh a single one on my scale before I put it in the well. I would unhook it, and that was in the well, and I was back at it. So day one, I thought I had around 24 pounds, and at the time of me coming in, 24 and change was leading. So I was like, I'm on track, but I'm on track, but I'm gonna have to keep this up. And then I weighed 27.9, and I was like, okay, this is awesome. But I was just, I really that first day I was able to figure out kind of something special about one spot, and just after that day, I kind of let them rest. I basically left them biting the first day, so in hopes they'd be there day two. So I wasn't sure if they were going to be there, but I was excited to get back after them.
Heck yeah, man. Well, that's awesome. I know you're fishing the Northern Toyotas later on this summer. Champlain event kicks off at the end of this month, the very end of June. Then you got Thousand Islands, I believe, in August, Potomac in September. You've already qualified for the Toyota Championship in November. So outside of those and maybe some fishing at home, you've kind of made this push. You've gotten a lot of media here the last couple weeks. A lot of people talking about Alec Morrison and how he went to Texas and just blew it away. Where do you see your vision for where Alec wants to go over the next, kind of 12 to 24 months? What's your process of getting or moving on? Are you kind of happy where you're at, or is this something that you're wanting to pursue deeper?
Yeah, definitely always looking to pursue deeper. But as far as plans over the next, the rest of this tournament season, those plans will remain the same. Just going to do those Northern Toyotas and fish as much as I can. One little thing is I was able to obtain my captain's license over the winter down in Florida. They have a lot of options down there to get it. New York is kind of hard.
I know where this is going. So have you named the guide service yet?
No, I have not, but but I will be. I'll be open for trips. In between events on. Really wherever people want to go, wherever I may be, which includes of course, Champlain. Amazing fishery along with the St. Lawrence River, Ontario, and Cayuga as well.
So where can folks find you at? Are you going to just kind of promote the stuff on social? Where can they tag? Get a hold of Alec?
Yeah. I'm still getting things together, of course, but I got a website on the way. But as for now, go ahead and hit me up on my Instagram, either Instagram or Facebook. Both places are the same handle. It's just Alec Morrison Fishing. And shoot me a message, and I'm quick to reply, and we'll get something situated. It's always a good time. I look forward to taking some people out on some great fisheries and getting on some smallmouth.
Absolutely, man. They got them up there, smallmouth, largemouth, whatever anybody wants to catch. It can go down up in New York. I think obviously by most bass anglers that fish wide range geographically. They know how good New York is, but for weekend anglers that maybe don't get to travel quite as much, I mean, easily New York is top 5 states in the country for bass fishing. It's a shorter season,
No doubt.
but it is some incredible fishing in the state of New York. So,
No doubt.
all right, Alec, man, it's been awesome to have you on the show. Appreciate you being with us today. We're going to
Thanks so
continue
much.
watching your career progress for sure.
Oh, man. Can't wait to come back on.
All right. Alex, stay right there. Everyone, don't move a muscle. We're going to go from reservoir fishing in Texas to TVA impoundments in Alabama. It's going to be fun to jump into this feature angler spotlight with Jacob Wall. Alex, you can hang out too if you want, but we're going to be right back. We're going to throw Jacob into the hot seat. Y'all stay tuned for more right here from Bass Edge Radio.
Come on, man, let's roll.
What the?
To catch the fish, you need to be one with the fish.
With Power Pole shallow water anchors, you'll get the ultimate in precision, power, and control, so you can catch more fish. No face paint or phony fins necessary.
Excessive shock and vibration are 2 leading causes for premature battery failure. Prolong the life of your batteries with the new MegaWare Battery Guard. The Battery Guard sits under your battery and absorbs excessive vibration and bounce, reducing G-shock by up to 80%. Great for boats or anywhere shock and vibration can damage a battery. The Battery Guard can easily be trimmed to fit virtually any custom shape or battery size. Save money by protecting your batteries. Spend more time on the water and less on maintenance. Find yours at megaware.com.
All right, here we go. More and more Bass Edge Radio. Man, we've got the TVA guy in the house right now. A new TVA guy. But, man, everybody say hello, or I should say hello to Mr. Jacob Wall, MLF Bass Pro Tour angler. Jacob, thank you so much for being with us on Bass Edge Radio.
Thanks, Kurt. Yeah, it's a good opportunity to be on here. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. We got a great glimpse of Guntersville with the Bass Pro Tour there in town. Jacob Wheeler taking the win. But, man, you had a phenomenal event. Your best finish in the Bass Pro Tour up to this point, finished 2nd place. How did it feel doing it on the new home lake?
I mean, coming into it, man, I had a lot of pressure on my shoulders, living here for 4.5 years. It's like put a lot of time in on the water. I'm one of those guys that spends countless hours out there, days on end. I wake up in the morning, all I can think about is getting back out on the lake. I live about 10 minutes from the Honeycomb boat ramp. If you're familiar with Guntersville, that's kind of the lower end of the lake.
Yeah.
And if I drive past Honeycomb, I can get to, more mid-lake stuff in about 20-25 minutes. So I'm so close to the lake, man, that I live and breathe fishing out there. And so I was pretty, excited to have the event there. I knew the potential going out there mid-May was really good. It's one of my favorite times, if not my favorite time to fish Guntersville. It's early ledge season. They start to pull out. And a lot of the local guys, I mean, some of them figure it out and they go out there and find them. But, it's not like they're everywhere out deep that time of the year, early ledge season. So you've got to really know where to look and understand your electronics. And so I felt really, comfortable going out there, and I was pretty excited for the event.
Right. That's great, man. And a lot of Bass Pro Tour anglers live in that region of the country. So there was a lot of hometowners, right, in this event. But let's go back to kind of where you're from and kind of your evolution into the MLF Bass Pro Tour. Man, you're originally from the Northwest. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you developed your fishing when you were fishing in the high school and the early Toyota or Costa division at that time back there in the West Coast.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of briefly touch base on everything that I've done, to get to the point where I'm at here. Obviously to get to this level is a huge achievement. It's very difficult to get to. I don't know if everybody's really aware of how to qualify for it or not.
Or how difficult it is.
Or how difficult it is to get to this point. But I'll briefly, I'll just kind of start from the beginning and I'll get into where I'm at now. But when I was really young, when I was 12 years old, looked at local clubs in the Southern Oregon area. I grew up in Jacksonville, Oregon, which is real close to Medford. It's very Southern Oregon. So we're a real dry climate. It's not really like what people think, the West Coast or Oregon might be real rainy and wet. That's more like Central Oregon up to like Northern Oregon. So where I'm from, it's real dry. We've got a lot of more Northern California kind of weather. So real dry, almost like desert. During the summertime, we have a lot of like forest fire kind of stuff, that happens. It's pretty crazy. I mean, it's definitely not like what you would expect, seeing pictures from out West. But anyway, grew up there. Did a lot of club tournaments when I was young. I did a lot of stuff, with team tournaments, did a lot of individual tournaments. And then I got into, I did actually casting for kids. I don't know if you've heard of that before, Kurt.
Absolutely.
I did that when I was real little, and I actually traveled throughout the country doing target casting competitions. And what they used to do is set up these targets, and you have 3 different distances that you'd actually, pitch, flip, and then cast to hit the target. Right. And I actually think, God, it's been so long. I think I got 3rd in the nation at casting.
Nice.
When I was really young. So I did that. Then I did junior level stuff, and I fished a bunch of junior level competitions.
Real quick. So that casting competition, if I'm not mistaken, the finals were always taking place at the Bassmaster Classic. Is that right?
Yep.
So you as a young guy, you got the limelight of where this whole bass fishing thing could evolve to.
Absolutely. In 2008, I got to go to the Classic and watch Alton Jones win. I believe it was on Hartwell.
Yes.
And
that's right.
I was there doing the target casting.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was cool, man. It was good. I got to, I've got stuff in this room, but you might be able to see some of it. Let's see, where's my finger at? There it is. There's a flag up there, KVD flag, and that thing's signed from Kevin. I think that was from 2008. So I still have memorabilia floating around in this room from those times. So pretty cool. And then I did high school fishing after the junior level stuff. And I actually got 2nd in the nation in 2012 with a buddy of mine, Colby Pearson. We teamed up, went out to Lake Murray and got 2nd at the nationals there. That was in high school. And then in college, I fished for the University of Oregon for 4 years and competed in every national championship every year. I qualified for every single one.
Man, that's awesome.
And I actually won still to this day, one of the most memorable wins I've had. I haven't had a lot of big wins. I've had I'm a very consistent angler. I have good finishes, but I haven't had a lot of wins under my belt.
Okay.
Down on Lake Mead, I was fishing a Bassmaster regional college tournament. It was a 3-day event, and I took the win on that one. And
nice.
I got to hold up 2 trophies because there was a team tournament. I fished it by myself.
And you were solo.
Yep.
So you won both of them.
Yep. So they're like, we've never done this before. I was the first guy to ever win one of those Bassmasters solo. And so they're like, I guess you hold up both. And they handed me both of them.
That is so cool. So you evolved from there, and really MLF, they've really planted their foot out west. They have the Toyota series out there, and that was kind of your progression to the next step, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Living out west, I didn't really have the option to do the opens. I've heard, I guess there was Western Opens for a while.
There was. Yes, there was.
I wasn't, that was before my time. So I was pretty much what was in my wheelhouse, and what was present to me was the Costa series, now Toyota series.
Yep.
And I jumped into that in 2018, the year I graduated college in 17, jumped into the Costas in 18. And my first year out, that year they were taking the top 10 in the points to qualify for the FLW Tour at the time.
Okay.
And so I finished 8th in the points, and I qualified, and I was not ready for it. I was not ready for it. I know. I was like, wait a second. I qualified for the tour? I was like, I just graduated college. Wait, how do I do this? What do I need to do? And so we ended up coming back to Guntersville for the championship that year. And I really liked the area and started looking for houses to possibly rent around here. And my dad and I stayed an extra couple of days. And found the place we're still living in now. We're still renting, probably going to look to buy here in the next year or so. But still renting the same place that we found then. And
that's cool.
And it's been great. I love living here, and we decided to move, and man, it all happened so fast. In like 2 months, I had to come out here, find a place, move everything across the country, buy a boat, figure out how to fish out here, and then boom, like January came around, we went to Rayburn. So
you were on the pro circuit at that time, the MLF pro circuit, which is now called the Invitationals, and I think you took a little lump the first year, but then you were top 10 in 2020.
Yeah.
Then, not a great, still a solid finish in 2021, but 2022, you qualify for the Bass Pro Tour. Now you're at the premier event series in the organization. What was it like as you jumped into this new realm after really, it sounds like a long time, 3 years, but man, that's not a ton of time. What was it like now? You got the KVD flag on your door right there. Now KVD's idling next to you, getting ready for blast off.
Yeah, man, it's surreal when you go out there for someone like myself. Obviously, went to those tournaments when I was real young and got to see these guys competing, and it was always just a dream. And it seemed so like, it didn't seem like it was something that I could even like. Didn't seem feasible. It didn't seem like it was even within reach. It seems so far out of like reach that right. Being in that position, this year being on the tour, like you said, launching the boat next to these guys, it was surreal. The first tournament, it's like, whoa, look at all these dudes that I'm fishing against. But at the same time, like 4 years fishing the tour, now that, man, they change the name of it every year, it seems like, but FLW tour, then to the pro circuit, and now to the invitationals, fishing that for 4 years. I did compete in 2020, I think. God, the years all blend together. Maybe it was 2021. I can't remember, but I competed in some of those, what they call them, those super tournaments.
Okay, yeah. So you kind of got around some of the guys that jumped in, because that was the COVID year, and you had a lot of the MLF Bass Pro Tour events kind of get squashed, and they gave the opportunity for those BBT anglers to jump into the pro circuit events, which turned into those super tournaments, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they were cool, man. They were good events. They're huge fields. I mean, it was like over 200 guys.
Yeah.
I did pretty well in those events. I think we went to lacrosse and I placed in the 20s. We went to Chick and I placed somewhere in like the 30s, maybe 40s. I cut a check, on
right.
I want to say all three of them. I think all three of them that we did.
Yeah, the other one was Lake Erie.
Yeah, I didn't cut a check there. That's right. So I cut a check out of 2 of the 3. But
cool, very cool. Well, that was great to see. Obviously, you've made this trek from the West Coast to the East Coast, really just putting the faith in what you want to do and freaking making it happen, dude. I want to break down some stuff on Guntersville for this last event at the Bass Pro Tour that you finished in second place. Man, I was able to watch live for some of this event, and I was lucky enough to jump on through probably a 30 or 40 minute segment where you were on camera primarily, and you already had a really good bag. You talked about, understanding these early spots where these fish will show up out on ledges in May, and that you really like this time of year. You had a good bag. You were either leading. I think you were definitely leading, and you weren't sure how hard to push, right? Because you don't want to beat up your fish. But you broke out a bait, ended up catching a couple 5-pounders. You jumped from 22 to 26. Let's talk about that process, the bait you used for that, because I really feel like this is a great learning experience for the listeners out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just give a quick background of just kind of how I got into swim bait fishing. It's not like I just all of a sudden was like, oh man, glide baits, they're a big deal, I'm going to go buy a couple, I've been throwing swim baits out west, grew up doing that with a good buddy of mine. Same guy that I actually got second at the high school nationals with. He and I got super into swim bait fishing when we were young. It was big in California. We lived real close to that. Down there, they're imitating trout. And we lived in Oregon and we have a lot of trout. So it was like, okay, maybe we can take this same thing and do it here. And so we started really, delving into that and doing that. and got pretty well versed on throwing a lot of big baits.
Okay.
And that time I wasn't buying a lot of expensive baits because I was obviously in high school and stuff. And so we were making a lot of baits in our garage. We were belt sanders and jigsaws and like making stuff that we could fish, and we caught big fish on that stuff. But that's kind of how I got my roots in big bait fishing. Obviously I did buy some baits and got, familiar with some baits. The Gancraft Joint and Claw was one I threw a lot. Lunker Punker, MS Slammer, Huddlestons, a lot of those baits I played a big role in my younger years swim bait fishing. But recently over the last year, I started getting back into it because when I moved out here, I was like, man, I just need to figure out how to fish in the East and in the South. It was so new to me. I kind of put that stuff aside a little bit. I was like, I really just need to focus on getting in tune with these fisheries. So this year, this last winter, I really started to pick it up more and more. And I picked up this bait here. It's called a KGB Chad Shad. And
where's that bait made? What's KGB? Where's it?
KGB is
it
actually
Russian?
No.
Just
so it actually, what that is it's a guy's name. His name's Kevin Brightwell. Believe it or not, when I was growing up, I actually watched the progression of Kevin making these baits. Maybe not this particular one. I don't remember what he called them. He has different names for different baits, but he's been doing this for a really, really long time. But KGB, I believe, are his initials. Okay. And so this is a resin one. This one's, something that it's not mass produced. They're made one by one. It's not a molded plastic bait. Spro and Kevin KGB kind of teamed up and they made the one that is now mass produced by Spro, the Chad Shad, which is the same bait. It's just a 2-piece injected plastic bait, not a solid resin bait. So anyway, I started throwing this around a lot before Guntersville for, a number of months and getting in tune with this bait, because each swim bait, if the viewers that are listening, or you, Kurt, you probably, if you've thrown swim baits, you understand each bait kind of acts a little differently.
Sure.
You've got to kind of get the feel for each bait and understand, how it swims and the cadence of how to work it and all that stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Line size, rod, reel, all that stuff. So that was the guy that I spent a lot of time with. And this guy right here was the bait that I pulled out on the first day of the tournament on Guntersville. And like you said, I already had a good bag. I think I had 24-13 at that point. And I pulled, and if anybody was watching, they're probably thinking, why is he not laying off his fish? Well, I ran from the lower end of the lake all the way as far up as you can pretty much find offshore schools of fish on Guntersville in deep water. And I just wanted to check it to see how it was, how the fish were acting. I decided to pick that thing up, and it was ridiculous. If anybody was watching the live, you got to witness it firsthand. I had no idea they would eat it like they did, and they were basically fighting over it. I threw it out there and sunk it down about 3 or 4 feet over the top of the school, started working it, and it was like, oh my Lord. Every fish in that group started to come up to my bait on active target, and I didn't even know what to do at first. I'm like, how do I work this? Because I was learning it as I did it. And before I could really even work the bait much, one locks up on it. I was like, oh my gosh, I got one, and I freaked out and go, oh, it's a 10-pounder, and everybody's giving me crap online for that. But man, when you're in that kind of position, when you've got that kind of weight in the boat and you pick up a bait like that just off of a whim, people could sit on their computer and sit online and say what they will about what, my commentary is, but until
emotions are flowing. Yeah, dude, you can't control it. You just got to roll with the flow, just like you did by picking up that bait. Let's dive into that real quick. You're ledge fishing these days. We're looking at forward-facing sonar. I'm sure you're seeing some fish that are up there. How deep is the spot? How far up do they have to come to react to this bait? You mentioned it running, 3, 4, 5 foot deep. Kind of give the audience a little bit of insight on how the drawing power was for this particular lure.
Okay. This is the juice right here. I'm going to tell you because I've always been a very open angler. I'm very happy to share my information that I learn I'm not going to give you waypoints, but I'll give you the details.
I'm going to ask the hard questions too. I'm going to ask the stuff that hopefully brings that out of you. So I appreciate you sharing with us.
Absolutely. So that school of fish, when they were set up in my opinion, the place where they were feeding. So it was a creek channel mouth, and I was on the down current side of the creek channel, not the up current side. And that's pretty standard for the TVA. They want to set up on like the point of like if you've got a hump, they're not going to be on the back side of the hump most of the time. They're going to be on the front side of the hump. And that's just kind of how the TVA is. They like to get on the up current side of things. You know, if it's a creek mouth, even though I said they're on the down current side, it's the side of which the current is going to actually be running into, you know, because the other side current's sweeping over top of it, and then it's coming down and it's hitting the down current side, if you can visualize what I'm saying.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So where they feed on that spot is there, you know, it's obviously deep. You got your creek channel. And when they're not really set up to feed, they're kind of on these breaks. They're right on that drop, you know, and they'll go all the way out into the ditch sometimes, you know, but when they're set up to feed, they're up here, you know, they're on that flat, you know, right next to the actual creek channel itself. And it's not far. I mean, that school will, you know, kind of trickle all the way out to the break, but the majority of the fish are going to be up on the flat. And so what I did was I set up and I actually would parallel the edge of the creek channel. I would try to set my boat out as far as I could in the main river channel and parallel over top of that flat. And those fish were anywhere from 6 to 15 feet of water, you know, and that shallow stuff was, you know, obviously the highest point of where it came up. And then the deeper water was off more of that break. And this is real shallow as far as like Tennessee River ledge fishing goes.
Sure.
But this bait, the key to this thing, so I've got on the front hook, I've got a little piece of lead on there. It's actually made by a company that I work with called Nashine Lure Works. And it's a small piece of lead that you can put on any bait. He designed it to go on his Erie series of jerk baits, they're an awesome jerk bait. You can add this weight or take it off. If you have it on there, it'll slow sink. If you take it off, it'll float. You can clip the weight to get it to suspend. And you can basically do the same thing with your swim bait. You know, you can add 1 to it. You can add 2 to it. And what that's going to do is alter the sink rate of the bait. So
you can find this at Tackle Warehouse, I guess?
Yep, Tackle Warehouse. Okay. You can find the weight. You can find the little weights on the Nashine Lure Works website as well. But, yeah, Tackle Warehouse.
Is that a JDM company?
They're based out of Canada.
Canada, okay.
Yeah, so Hiroshi Nishine, the owner and designer of all the baits, he is actually Japanese. He's from Japan.
Right.
And he moved to Canada. It's a pretty long story short. He moved to Canada and he started this company. And it's JDM stuff, but he lives in Canada.
Gotcha.
So anyway, that's key, you know, because I want to basically get this bait down. And I'll let you in on a little bit of juice. I had a 26-pound bag yesterday in about 4 hours on Guntersville just fooling around, all on this and bigger baits than this, baits that were, you know, 2 or 3 inches bigger than this. And this is a 7-inch bait. So the deal is basically you want to sink this out to the school no matter what depth they're in. And the key is to get it down over about 2 or 3 of those fish if it's, you know, a spread out school. Luckily, that school that I did in the tournament, they were so tight together. I'd sink it down over the school and like 6 or 7 or 8 of them would all see it at the same time and they'd come up on it. But basically you're trying to get it about 2, 3, 4 feet above their head, enough to where they'll start to basically draw to the bait.
Yes.
And then once you start moving a couple of them, I don't know if it's the other fish
competition,
competition. And I don't know if the other fish can feel like in their lateral line, those other fish starting to move. I think that must be what it is because I watched it a lot on Active Target. I don't know exactly why they were moving, you know, based on these other fish moving, because I don't think some of them can even really see what's going on. They just feel it, I think.
Okay.
And dude, like when you get a couple of them going on it and you start twitching that bait,
it's like a flock.
If you've ever sat on an offshore school of fish and you've watched them chase something and you go, oh my gosh, they're all coming to the surface to chase something. Like, what are they doing? You know, oh, there must be some, look at that little ball of shad. They must be going after that.
Right.
That's what they do for that swim bait.
That's cool.
It's incredible.
So cool, man. Well, how difficult was it coming from I know you spent a lot of time fishing TVA impoundments. TVA impoundments are really special places. I mean, it's a river. If anybody's like confused, basically it's a river system running from Knoxville and winding down through Tennessee, northern Alabama, into Kentucky Lake and out to the Ohio River. And these TVA lakes, many of them, there's about 8 of them. They all kind of set up very similar, but very different from a typical reservoir. And that's why I feel like a lot of people have some tough times when they go there, understanding the current, like you explained before, how fish set up on these ledges, and just kind of attacking these styles of fisheries. How did you become educated to be able to work through these progressions of ledge fish, and was there something that just clicked for you at a certain moment, or was it just experience over time?
Man, I'd say just over time, I got real familiar with, different things and what to look for. And then when I would go to Chickamauga, like you said, the Tennessee River kind of translates from one fishery to the next. When I'd go to Chick for, different tournaments and stuff, it'd be like, that looks like what I fish on Guntersville. I bet they set up there, and you pull over and then you scan it. And it's like, oh my gosh, look, there's a school of fish, so it's just become kind of like just second nature to me now after doing it so many times, over the last 4.5 years. Spent a lot of time out there, like I said, when I'm not competing. I don't guide. I just basically go out there and spend my time on the water fishing, whether it's by myself or with buddies. Fish a lot of like Tuesday nighters and, evening tournaments, and jump in a lot of open tournaments and all that kind of stuff, and just try to stay on the water. And a lot of it's on the TVA.
Very cool. Very cool. Let's dive into determining shallow or deep at Guntersville. We talked in the intro about there was a bluegill bite, going on, and it went really well for some anglers. Dudley won the bluegill tournament I mentioned in the intro. He finished 4th, but and what I mean by that, he won the of the guys that were targeting that pattern. He kind of finished the highest in the tournament. For you, was it difficult to determine in practice? You get 2 days of practice for a Bass Pro Tour event. Was it difficult to determine which way you were going with this strategy?
At first, before the tournament started, I knew there were going to be multiple different kind of things going on. Obviously in May, you've got still fish spawning. I did find fish in practice, largemouth on beds that I never even went back to. They weren't big fish or anything, like 2.5 to 3 pounders.
Right.
And then obviously I wanted to spend a day shallow. So I spent the second day of practice shallow, and I went to some of my areas that I know get a big population of bass that spawn, and in turn you get the bluegill to spawn there. They all use similar stuff. Basically, they're targeting shell bars, and if you're not familiar with the Tennessee River, or if maybe even you are, not just you, Kurt, but people viewing,
sure.
Shell bars on the Tennessee River, based on my experience over the last few years, are the most important thing, like the top tier most important thing. Like over anything else, shell bars are the deal. I mean, whether it's in a foot of water or out in 30 feet of water, a shell bar is a bass's home on the Tennessee River. And so anyway, I went into these areas in practice, looked around some shell bars, basically, which when you're shallow, you're looking for points, the same kind of stuff you'd look for on other fisheries. But in Guntersville, you're looking for those areas that have a hard bottom, places where the bottom can easily be cleared off by the bass or the bluegill in order to create their beds.
Sure.
Man, I found one point in practice that was like 100 yards long, and the entire thing was covered with bluegill beds. And there's like basically what you would see out on a ledge, with your graph, amount of bass swimming around this point. But they were so hard to catch.
Okay. Like
incredibly hard to catch. Like I caught 3 or 4 of them, but they're all smaller, 2, 2.25, 2.5. But I saw, some 4, 5, 5.5, maybe not much bigger than that, but some good ones, nice quality fish, right. But they were so difficult to catch. I think that day 2 of practice, I only had like 12 pounds, up shallow. It was not easy to get them to bite. Obviously I'm moving around fast, and when you're shallow, you want to be stealthy. But this time of the year, I want to be deep. Before the tournament started, I talked to a buddy of mine and he's like, what are you going to do? And I was like, it's like, man, I hate to do this coming into a tournament. I hate to have preconceived.
Yes.
But I was like, I'm going to fish out deep. I just know Guntersville this time of the year. And I was real dead set on wanting to do that. And day one of practice, I ran around, and since it's only 80 guys and a lot of 90% of these guys know to look out there, I figured, you know what, I'm going to practice deep one day and scan a bunch of stuff and try to locate my best schools, or where I felt like I had the best groups of fish. Yeah. And man, I made a few casts, and all those casts that day were with this guy right here. This is actually a smaller spoon. A lot of guys watched me on live and thought I was throwing a big old Magnum spoon. This is actually a 5-inch Nichols, just Lake Fork flutter spoon. Yep. And man,
that's an old school spoon.
It is. It is. But I had 21 pounds that first day just running around and making like 1 or 2 casts on each school with that spoon. And I was like, man, the quality bites are out here, and I caught a number of other like 3.5 pounders that wouldn't have helped towards my best 5 that first day of practice, but just good quality fish that you could still have in a 20-pound bag.
Yeah. So you were all in, but the cool thing is, from your description here, you kept it honest up shallow. So you kind of did your due diligence right there. As the event progressed, particularly in the championship round, and you could see this through the qualifying round as well. And that was, some places got beat up pretty bad and it got tough. You had some flip-flopping where an angler would add 18 to 22 pounds, and then they'd have, 3 for 8 or whatever, and you saw some of that flip-flopping, but, it kind of started to get tough. We saw you have a fair first day for the championship round, and then ultimately finish second. How did you adjust with that bite getting a little bit tougher as the tournament progressed to solidify that second place finish?
Yeah, so you're totally right. Through the qualifying rounds, it felt really just kind of natural and kind of easy. I'd pull up on stuff where I saw some fish, where I knew there were fish. I'd look at them on active target, and I may not catch a lot, but I'd pluck off 1 to 4 fish off each school. Was what it was kind of coming down to, and my quality was good. I was catching mostly high 2s at the very smallest, up to like 5.25, 5.5 pounders. Come the knockout round, it got way tougher. I think I only had 2 fish in the first period, one of which was a 4-pounder, which, obviously that's a fish that you need to have, your 20 pounds or better.
Absolutely.
The other one was like a 2 3/4. So I was having a way slower start considering the other 2 days I had, 20 plus in the morning, first period. So anyway, my adjustment, I know on Guntersville, a lot of the times I looked at the one benefit of fishing the Bass Pro Tour is we get to know what everybody else has.
Yes.
So
score tracker.
Exactly. And even though it's my first year, I kind of understand. I've watched a lot of the Bass Pro Tour over the last few years. I understand sort of how to utilize that as a tool. And I saw a bunch of guys around me offshore fishing, ledge fishing, and guys like Matt Lee, Jordan Lee, Josh Butler, a lot of guys that really know how to catch them on Guntersville out deep, local guys, and they were struggling. Like Matt and Jordan that first period did not have a fish. I think Butler only had a couple. And so I was like, man, this lower end of the lake is just not firing this morning. And so I ran about 10 miles up the lake, and I got to more of the middle section of the lake. And a lot of the times those fish will act differently than the lower end fish. And I pulled up on a school, couldn't get them to fire, pulled up on the next school, and my second cast with a big crankbait, I doubled, and that filled my limit. And that was kind of that momentum that I needed for that knockout round to just say, okay, it can happen today. I just need to keep grinding.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. And we're going to take a quick breather right here. I got to take a moment to thank Bass Pro Shops, man. Presenting partner in this feature angler spotlight segment of Bass Edge Radio. Bass Pro Shops, always reminding you that we all live downstream. All right, Jacob, running right back into it. The TVA you talked about right there before we went to that little voice break of running up mid-lake. if anybody knows Guntersville, and even if you don't know Guntersville, you can pull up a Navionics map, get a paper map, look at it on, Lake Master, whatever your choice is of graphing. You'll notice that the middle of that lake is really kind of a current choke point. It comes out of the upper river reaches where it's more narrow, and then it kind of spreads out when those creeks start. And then there's a small choke point with a couple of humps and some islands kind of in that midsection. And then at the bottom end of the lake, before there's a big turn in the lake, and it really widens up. Do you feel like it's a current-driven scenario why the lower lake might have been rougher that morning and that mid lake was a little bit better if they're pulling less water? Can you find some of those choke points in the main river current and do a little bit better and have those fish fire more often than maybe a wider section of the lake?
Yeah, I think there's a culmination of the current for sure. I think the current is a big deal on the TVA, and I don't really necessarily understand, like when it's lower current, like we were getting anywhere from like 15 to 17,000, which is, I mean, it was all relative because before our event we had, anywhere from 5 to like 7,000 for like a week or so. And so those fish were used to that lower current. And what that typically does is it scatters them out more. And when you get more current, it'll suck them tighter together. They'll actually hang out in those little bit, either less current areas or maybe those feeding paths where stuff kind of comes through. So we had decent current, but I think you're right. I think that lower end, that current has more room to spread out. It's not as tightly condensed, shooting down that, if you're looking at a map, the waterfront area is where I would consider like mid-lake, all the way up to like Goose Pond. I would consider Goose Pond a little bit more on like the upper end of the lake. And then as you start to get up more and more, I mean, so like I would consider Goose Pond like the upper end, and then once you get above BB Comer, it's still technically the lake, but really you're more into like the river at that point. Yeah.
I feel like too, just being there a few times that I have been, that bottom portion really starts to spread out there when you get down to the mouth of Seabold Creek. That's kind of where it really spreads, and it feels like a lot of fish caught in that section of the lake though down there. Before the Spring Creek Bridge and the main bridge that crosses the lake down there. But, man, such a dynamic fishery. We could sit here and break that thing down for days. But let's talk a little bit about moving forward into 2023. Man, you're currently sitting in a pretty good spot. Rookie on the tour, Bass Pro Tour, 30th place in AOY. We're starting to move into a little bit different behavior cycle of the year. We're here in the June 1 and we're into this kind of early summer deal, but you're going to be moving north. You've got 3 northern events, I believe the last 3 events of the year. What's your focus to kind of keep the momentum rolling? How will you kind of approach this last segment of the tour season?
Yeah, it's definitely a different part of the schedule. When we go up north, you're faced with, more like you kind of go backwards almost in time frame. Even though it's forward in the time of the year, right. You're going backwards as far as like the stages of the fish. Because right now in Guntersville they're 90% post spawn, and we're going to go up to Cayuga and they're probably going to be spawning and maybe even some pre-spawn. I'm not exactly sure.
Is this the earliest they've ever been to Cayuga this time of year?
I think so.
Okay. I felt that way as well. So, it's going to be a really interesting dynamic. So talking about those things and kind of, even though you're moving forward in the calendar year, you're kind of moving backwards potentially in the bass behavior aspect. Where does Jacob Wall thinking that this lies into him, and how's he going to keep that momentum going?
Man, I had a good event last year up north on the St. Lawrence. I got third up there in the championship, had a great event. I grew up fishing for smallmouth out on the West Coast. I love fishing, that type of, open water, clear water. Clear water does not intimidate me at all. In fact, I almost prefer clear water. And I love throwing a spinning rod, even though down here I throw a lot of big rods, big line, big, baits, that kind of stuff. Once we go up there, it's going to be a lot more spinning rods, lighter line. And it's all within my wheelhouse. And I don't know, man. I've always, been pretty good at being diverse in the way that I approach things. And so as time goes on with Active Target, I get better and better with that. And I think that's going to be a big deal up there, looking at fish, either singular fish or little groups of fish. And I think that's going to be a big deal, is using your electronics just like it was on Guntersville. And so I'm just going to utilize all the little nuances that I know and try to make things happen. One thing that I will do, since I've never been to any of the next 3 stops before, and I did not get a chance, like Alec did, it sounded like he had a lot of practice,
right.
Down there on Rayburn. I didn't have a chance to go up and pre-practice for these events. So what I'll do is I'll pick an area of the lake. I'll do some, research online, figure out sort of what historically, maybe not exact spots, but
sure.
I'm looking for like generalized areas of the lake, sections of the lake. And I'll kind of break down what I feel like is going to be a good higher, percentage area for me, and just kind of put my head down in that area and pick things apart.
Cool.
Very similar to what Alec was saying, listening to him, he has a very, he sounds like a very seasoned angler, even though he's only 23.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Talking about the West Coast and you fishing for some smallies back there and kind of having that in your youth repertoire that you can kind of lean on a little bit. Did you get to fish the Columbia a whole lot?
I didn't fish it a ton, but I have fished the Columbia a fair amount.
Does it translate to the same setup as the St. Lawrence Seaway? The way that place sets up?
Man, I haven't fished the Columbia enough to really know the translation. Okay. Based on my experience on the Columbia, it's been a lot more shallow water experience. It seems like I caught a lot more fish on the Columbia up shallower than I did on the St. Lawrence. There's more current on the Columbia. The current on the Columbia is real strong, really strong. I mean, you got a lot of current on the St. Lawrence too. But through certain sections, other sections, it kind of slows down once it widens out. But didn't really fish the Columbia enough to have a whole lot to compare and contrast.
I want to just throw that out there. I love those West Coast fishers. Some of them don't get talked about enough, but man, they've and obviously, Oregon is not the hotbed of bassers, right? But
no,
here comes Jacob Wall right out of the state of Oregon. So that's freaking awesome. I just love talking. I love the West Coast stuff. I always try to get out there whenever I can. I love fishing Havasu, Meade, where you won your college event.
Yep.
I got lucky enough to had a good U.S. Open event out there one year. And anyway, the West Coast is intriguing to me. I love the way that you grew up there, and it was part of your developmental process. So that was really cool. Jacob, you're 28 years old, doing your thing, and you're doing it well. That is a song, by the way. But working your way up through the system as a younger angler in the game, what can you tell anglers, young or old or middle-aged, that are striving to get into your shoes?
Man, I mean, the biggest thing for me is just staying consistent and not, giving up. And, there's a lot of times in this sport, ups and downs. And over the last, I don't know, I really didn't have this like outlook on it until maybe last year, maybe partway through the year before. But I really have tried not to get too high with the highs and not too low with the lows. Stay really like in the middle, stay neutral, whether you're having success or whether you're not having success. Just try to stay even keeled and, don't let things kind of sway you positive or negative. And I think that'll benefit you and your fishing and really just throughout life.
Very cool, man. Those are wise words. You've been through the gauntlet. You're on the top, right? I know you've got more steps you're looking to climb. And, man, we're going to look forward. Any final thoughts you got for the Bass Edge listeners out there?
Man, just thank you so much, Kurt, for the opportunity. I appreciate it. This has been cool, fun, and look forward to the next event up north.
Heck yeah, man. Well, good luck. We're going to follow your progress up there. It's been fun to have you on the show. Thanks for breaking down TVA impoundments like you did, man. Really appreciate that. Everybody, don't go away. We're going to have my final thoughts right after this break. We'll be right back.
Nitro, a rush of tournament adrenaline. Nitro. the choice of champion, where performance meets play. Nitro, a big water beast, a pure fishing machine. Nitro, release the champion within.
Nobody wants to run out of power when they're on the water. There is a better way. Introducing the Charge Marine Power Management Station from PowerPole that does the work of 3 devices: a traditional battery charger, a charge on the run, and an emergency start system. PowerPole Charge.
Jacob, appreciate you being on the show, man. We're going to close it out with some final thoughts while you're tweaking some baits. But, and again, it was great to have you on the program.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
All right. All right, here we go. We've got some final thoughts and kind of a wrap up of the episode. Want to shoot back real quick. Let's talk about the interview we had with Alec Morrison. Alec, like I say, kind of blew that whole, not like I say, like he showed, just kind of blew that thing out there at Sam Rayburn. One tidbit I really took away from his interview was that he talked about idling through those big, expansive points and flats out there at Rayburn. That's why the Carolina rig is so popular in East Texas. If you're an East Texas angler, you throw Carolina rig, period. There's no question about it. But the deal with Alec and finding those little, what I'll probably say is subtle contour breaks into river channels or into the drains, and then being able to find cover that is associated with that structure. That was really, I felt like, the key to his success, that he was able to kind of dial that in. And, a lot of times we see a pattern like that so early in a pre-practice process or a practice process that some of that stuff can go away. But I really feel like just time of year, that was coming to him, and it was easy for him to capitalize that all the way through. But a little bit different, I think, approach than you hear from a lot of people that are fishing Sam Rayburn. And just lowland reservoirs in general of that type, wherever you might live in the country. Then the Jacob Wall interview, man, just another phenomenal young angler. The neat thing he said kind of toward the end of the interview when he talked about going up north was he's a Lowrance guy, so he's using that active target, the forward-facing sonar. He realizes that there is still adaptation and things that all anglers are going to grow from utilizing forward-facing sonar. We've talked about in a few episodes here recently. We saw Tyler Rivette catching fry garters with forward-facing sonar there on Murray. We saw Jacob Palmer catching spawning fish that he couldn't see on Santee Cooper. Really working a bait over top of fish there that he saw with forward-facing sonar. And here we've got Jacob Wall taking his forward-facing sonar, understanding where fish are being set up on these ledges, and then utilizing a glide bait, a bait, something that it was pretty apparent he really hadn't thought about a whole lot before throwing that situation, but he's learning more about how to use forward-facing sonar, how to get those big fish to react, and then he talking about them flocking to that glide bait. That was a really cool interview, and just another awesome learning experience here on Bass Edge Radio. Let's talk real quick about some upcoming events. As this show goes live here June 1, you got the Bassmaster Elite Series down on the Sabine River. If you're a local, it's the Sabine River. But Jason Christie, the most recent winner there. And Sabine, man, it's a backcountry deal. I'm going to look for, the river anglers to do well in this kind of thing. in this style of tournament. And I don't think typically on this body of water, it's a guy that gets off on his own, but the more that the Elite Series visits the Sabine and that expansive area that they had to fish, I mean, basically from Houston all the way back to Orange, Texas, and all the rivers and creeks and canals in between, it's possible we're going to see somebody else kind of get away from the crowd and come out with a victory there. So stay tuned for that Bassmaster Elite Series on the Sabine. As Jacob mentioned earlier, he's headed off to Cayuga in New York. That's kind of that southern tier of New York, kind of western New York. But Lake Cayuga, man, this time of year, I don't believe the Bass Pro Tour has been there this early in the year. Dustin Connell won the last major event that was on Cayuga, targeting forward-facing sonar, smallmouth bass primarily. Dakota Ebear also had a ridiculous event doing the same thing. I'm going to say that forward-facing sonar is probably going to be important in this event, but I think it's going to be a spawn fest. I feel like anglers are going to be able to pick off some big spawning fish. Those smallmouth out there in Cayuga are, especially in that middle section of the lake where it gets up to about 300 feet deep. It's a glacier lake, so it's long and skinny, but a lot of those fish in the mid-lake section don't get really targeted a whole lot. And I think the time of year that they're visiting up there, you're going to see some big smallmouth caught off the bed, so that's going to be fun to watch. Man, that's going to wrap up the show. Big shout out to Jacob Wall. Thank you for joining us here on the program, and congratulations on that second place finish at the BBT. Alec Morrison, big Toyota MLF win. We're going to be watching him up in New York, see if he can back this deal up with the Northern Toyota Series. And man, be sure that you tune back into Bass Edge Radio. We're going to have another episode, of course, on June the 15th, where we're going to be continuing to chat bassin' and become better anglers. And man, it's cool. We're going to do this all together, so it's going to be a lot of fun. The Bass Edge podcast, remember, now available on YouTube. That's right, through Bass Edge's YouTube, continuing on your audio podcast platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. Don't forget, you can keep up with our website, bassedge.com. Bass Edge, of course, presented by MegaWare Keel Guard, and also, which is the developer of the first DIY keel protector, providing boat owners from protecting from grinding, salt, abrasive rocks, concrete boat ramps, along with Nitro Performance bass boats, Bass Pro Shops, and Power Pole. Adios, everybody. We're going to see you next time here at Bass Edge Radio. Bye-bye.